It's not necessarily that Pinot is a better wine, but it certainly is more subtle. Pinot is just such a textural wine in the mouthfeel. It goes beyond the flavors. People eventually either love it or hate it. It takes a stand. It knows what it is. It really is defined by where it grows. It's very susceptible to mildew and rot and pests and disease because it is thin-skinned. The difference between when it's really great and when it's really bad, meaning herbal, underripe, is so exciting because the range can be so great between those high highs and those low lows that it's a gamble if you don't know the wine. I guess that's what draws me to Pinot Noir. And do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 225. Which aspects of the Beamsville Bench make it particularly suited for growing wine grapes? Why is Pinot Noir called the heartbreak grape? And what are some ways for wine professionals and wine lovers to moderate their consumption? You'll hear those tips and stories in my chat with sisters Sandy Dawkins and Michelle Lester, who co-host the podcast Wines to Find. They're actually interviewing me this time. Now, a quick update on my upcoming memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much. One of the many juicy bonuses I've created for you when you pre-order the memoir is my own private book club gathering and wine tasting online. Come on your own or bring your book club or wine group members with you if they've pre-ordered it too. I'll start by guiding you through a tasting of wines mentioned in the book. I'll choose those that are widely available, but don't worry if you can't find them all because I'll suggest substitutes. I'll be reading some of my favorite passages in the book and talking about some of the hardest parts of writing this memoir and those that brought me the most joy. Then I'll open it up to a Q&A. Ask me anything about the book, wine, life. If you're curious about the process of writing a book or what has happened to the people mentioned in the memoir since then, this is your time to find out. Think of this as the ultimate wine and book lovers book club gathering. We're going to have so much fun, maybe a few tears, and you'll feel that connection, I think, with others who share your passion for reading and thinking and drinking. You'll find links to all the juicy bonuses and retailers to pre-order the book, no matter where you live, at winewitchonfire.com. Yep, I got the URL, winewitchonfire.com. Your support for this 10-year labor of love would mean the world to me. Thank you. Here's a review from Courtney Brilhart, an early reader from Columbus, Ohio. This is a page-turner because I wanted to know what happened next. There were a lot of surprising moments. I felt I learned a lot, and at times I felt sad, empathetic, angry, and relieved. I could really relate to the anxiety she was feeling, but in this context, that was new for me. This memoir is similar to one I read recently, Broken by Jenny Lawson. I learned a lot about the wine industry and the behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of previously, for better or worse. I would also say it gave me an inside look into how wine reviewers do their job and what's expected of them. I'm going to be more intentional in the wines I buy or the wineries I support. I also learned about what it's like running an online business. It was an interesting take on the damage that can be done to someone whose business is primarily online. At first, I didn't really understand the witch theme, but as the story was pieced together, it absolutely made sense later in the book. Overall, I liked the witch theme. In general, it's certainly original. I'm sure that it took a lot of courage to write this, but I think she has a wonderful book here. The more vulnerable we are, the better we will all be, in my opinion. Mine too, Courtney. Thank you. Thank you for the 5-star rating. I've posted a link to a blog post called Diary of a Book Launch in the show notes at nataliemaclean.com/225. This is where I also share more behind-the-scenes stories about the journey of taking this memoir from idea to publication. If you'd like a more intimate insider seat beside me on this journey, please let me know you'd like to become an early reader and get a sneak peek at the book before it's published. Email me at natalie@nataliemaclean.com. Okay, on with the show.
Welcome to episode 127 of Wines to Find. Our wines today are a Trader Joe's Santa Rita Hills Pinot Noir and a Rascal Pinot Noir from Oregon Wine Company. Our guest today is Natalie MacLean. Natalie is an accomplished, award-winning author of several books about wine. Podcast host of the Unreserved Wine Talk. She offers food and wine pairings, and it has to be noted, she is one of Sandy's favorites in terms of wine resources. Welcome, Natalie, to Wines to Find.
It's so great to be here with you, Sandy and Michelle, and thank you. I'm glad I'm resourceful for you. Always happy to help.
Well, it definitely is. Even before we started this podcast, I would listen to your podcast to get ideas as far as what wines to do. But now I almost find myself, I can't listen to what Natalie's saying because I don't want to copy her. So sometimes I'll go in and I just want to hear what she's saying. Go in.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Podcasts. Exactly. I'm sure you find it too. The power of podcasts. I find it so intimate, like someone's telling you a bedtime story almost. And I love that way to communicate with wine lovers because I think, you can take the deep dive as opposed to like a 2-minute Facebook video or whatever. I love this medium.
Yes, we do too. All right, well, let's hop right on into wine number 1, which is a Pinot that you brought, Natalie. And Pinot Noir is one of your favorites, right?
It is. I love Pinot Noir. And the one I've brought today is from 30 Bench, which is a small Niagara winery in Ontario. And it's made by Emma Garner, who I think is a rock star winemaker, one of our best in Canada. She really does specialize in Pinot Noir and Riesling in particular, which of course do well in our cool climate in Canada. So I guess I'll pour.
Okay.
And whatever you like, I can talk about the wine, I can talk about Emma, I can talk about Niagara, wherever you'd like to start.
Well, how about let folks know what's in the glass? Let's start with that.
Sure. Absolutely. So this wine comes from, they call it the Beamsville Bench, which is part of the Niagara Escarpment. So it's kind of tucked under the Niagara Escarpment, which is on a lake, a large lake. And so it benefits from sort of a protected area geographically. And that's why it also benefits the wine in that it has this nice long growing season. Because in Canada, of course, we're challenged. We have a cooler climate on average than most of the states, especially California. And so we're looking for these warm pockets. It's down, of course, in southern Ontario, but it's also got the lake effect, which will store up warmth and release it in the winter so that the vines don't freeze. And then in the summer, it cools off the vines when it gets especially hot. So it's a very special little place on the planet. And it once was covered by a prehistoric ocean, like a lot of wine vineyards.
I didn't realize that way was covered by ocean.
Yeah, it was. And so when it receded, of course, what it left were all these tiny sea creatures, the fossils, which of course became limestone and shale. And that is just such great soil drainage-wise for vines. I mean, it doesn't hold the water, so it makes those vines suffer. And we know suffering is good for vines and sometimes people. So it makes these wonderful, nervy, edgy wines, in terms of their acidity with the balance of the fruit. And I love that in both grapes and people who are a bit edgy, because it's just so interesting. It's so enlivening, and it makes it such a great food wine as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does it taste like?
So what does it taste like? Yeah, like get on with it. So I have tasted this wine many times before, so I'm not going to try to sip and talk at the same time, though I'll sip whenever I can and you guys are talking. But it has these aromas of ripe cherry, sort of black cherry, some spice, some earth. It doesn't have that barnyard that sometimes people like, sometimes people don't like, can be the result of Brettanomyces. But this has sort of freshly turned earth and mostly the berry aromas, although it's not heavy, really overly ripe fruit. So I find it very zingy on the palate, mouth-watering. Just looking at it, it's very Pavlovian. My mouth is watering as I look at the wine, even though I haven't tasted it yet. And I just think this makes it so wonderful for so many dishes, from beef bourguignon, beef burgundy cooked in red wine, beef, or veal or roast chicken, or, even grilled salmon. I mean, it's just got such a wide range. But what I almost love the most about it is it's got this sort of silky, velvety texture, no furry mouth tannins. And it brings to mind the famous California winemaker Andrei Chelichev, and he said, God made Cabernet Sauvignon, but the devil made Pinot Noir, because it's just so seductive and so wonderful. But of course, it's also called the heartbreak grape, as you know, because it's difficult to grow and make and expensive.
Finicky.
Yeah, finicky, exactly.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm going to take a taste now. So I just want to make sure that my notes were correct. Of course, I like to be thorough. So good. So juicy along the sides and nice long finish that keeps coming back and back. Well, I love that.
Very nice. Very
Excellent.
Nice. All right. Well, do we want to go ahead and do one of ours and then we'll all be sipping at the same time?
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Very communal. Yes.
It's not fair for you to be sitting there drinking wine and us not, Natalie.
No, I know. It's like, oh, when do we get to
All
our
right.
part?
So I think I have our wine number one, Michelle, which let me see if I can turn it so you guys can see it. We decided to do a Trader Joe's wine because so many people love to go there and get wine because it's usually a good price point. And when I was in there, I noticed this Pinot was from Santa Rita Hills, and we just had a winemaker on that had some wonderful wine from Santa Rita Hills. So I wanted to compare. His was probably about $40, $50. This was $10. So since we just had it so recently, I wanted to be able to compare it. So the taste was, and so this is a 2020 and it's lot 729. So that gives you an idea.
Yeah.
All right.
While the taste was fresh in our heads.
Oh, wow. And so Trader Joe's, just for anyone who doesn't know, say in Canada, that's a chain of stores. Is it more like Whole Foods or Costco, or is it somewhere in between?
It's in between. We have Aldi here and we have Trader Joe's, and they're very similar.
Okay.
It's, I believe, German is the company of origin, and Trader Joe's is a step above Aldi's, but I believe they're owned by two brothers. So it's two different grocery chains, and they tend to have gourmet type stuff, but at good values. And then they also have a lot of fruits, and they're known for the fruits and vegetables as well, but not on the high end. Trader Joe's is a little bit more than Aldi, but it's just accessible, good food at accessible prices.
And generally it's organic or something along those lines. It's more healthful based. So it's almost like Whole Foods, but not quite as expensive.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, not the whole paycheck.
All right. Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at this wine too. It's actually very dark and deep, rich for a Pinot. Whenever I look through it, it does have a little translucency, but I really cannot see my hand through it. And
wow, that is dark.
Yeah.
And the Santa Rita Hills, is it a very warm climate there? Like for those who may not be exactly sure where in California this is.
that's in Sonoma. So it's
Okay.
actually Santa Rita Hills is a little bit cooler because of the coastal breeze. So you will get that cooling effect because of that.
Sure.
Ooh, and on the nose, very cherry
Okay.
already. It
Very
is.
signature
It is.
of Pinot,
Let's go ahead
that
and taste,
cherry.
Michelle.
Whether it's red or dark.
Oh, it's nice. It's pleasant.
I'm just
Very
sniffing
nice.
and swirling mine as I watch you.
Tart.
It is cherry, strawberry, very fruit forward. Not a lot of earth in this one
and
at all.
And it definitely brings all the juices to your mouth as you taste it.
Okay.
It gets your juices going.
It does.
Yeah, literally whets your appetite for food. Like that's what a great wine does. So it must be pretty great for the price point, especially. That is incredible.
I think $10. I think this is actually pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. Natalie, you were saying that this was a heartbreak grape, and we all know the story of Sideways. And that was his heartbreak grape, yes. But why is it your heartbreak grape?
Well, I don't know if it's a perverse love of things that are difficult to love. Again, speaking globally across wines and people, but Pinot Noir wasn't one of the first wines I tasted or loved. I loved full-bodied Cabernet and Shiraz. They were just so much easier to love on first sip. But Pinot, I think a lot of people come around to it a bit later because of that edgy acidity.
That's Michelle. She was all Cabernet girl, and then I was the Pinot girl, and she was like, oh, but now we've turned her over into Team Pinot.
Yeah. All right. Our people. Okay. So I think, as you explore wines, it's not necessarily that Pinot is a better wine, but it certainly is more subtle. And so in the early days, I wanted the most bang for my buck, the most flavor, the most alcohol, whatever that I could get. But as I grew to love wine, and especially with food, I wanted combinations like wines that did not clobber the dish, especially if I wasn't having a steak where Cabernet would do well, but a lighter dish. I wanted some, more equal weight and flavor between the glass and the plate. And so I started onto Pinot from warm climates because they are fruitier. I would suspect if we had a side-to-side tasting with your Pinot and my Pinot, mine would be more acidic just because it's a cooler climate, even though Sonoma is cool for California. So as you know, when it's a cool climate, the grapes don't ripen as much. They preserve more of their acidity, and that's what stays with the wine. But that said, they're still very, very delicious. And I think Pinot is just such a textural wine in the mouthfeel. It goes beyond the flavors. But I think people eventually either love it or hate it. It's a bit of a polarizing wine. And I like that too in Grapes and People because it takes a stand. It knows what it is. It really is defined by where it grows because it is, as you said, finicky. So it's very susceptible, more susceptible than other grapes to mildew and rot and pests and disease and all the rest of it because it is thin-skinned. It's got a much thinner skin. And so I find, I guess, the difference between when it's really great and when it's really bad meaning herbal, underripe, just is so exciting because the range can be so great between those high highs and those low lows that it's almost like a gamble if you don't know the wine in tasting it. And so when you get something that's great, you go, yes, so good. Yeah. So I guess that's what draws me to Pinot Noir. And, it does have kind of some snobby connotations, not just because it's expensive, hard to appreciate, but, you've got Miles and Sideways, and he is an intellectual, and, he doesn't want to have anything to do with Merlot, which is just too easy to understand. Exactly. I'm not drinking any more of that Merlot. So I think it is a wine for everyone, but it's not a wine that everyone will grow to love. But join us, please. Join our little happy clan of Pinot lovers here. We're waiting for you.
No, Merlot.
Well, you had mentioned that you had started to get into Pinot so that you could have a wider variety of wine pairings. And you do a class that you offer for free about wine pairings. And I actually did that back when you first had it out. And I found that very, very helpful. So tell people just a little snippet about it because it is a great free resource for people.
Absolutely. Folks can find it at my site, nataliemclean.com/class. and you can sign up. There's a whole variety of times when you can take the class. But basically, I go over sort of some key concepts in food and wine pairing. So, one of my favorite sayings, I'm trying to remember who said this, but pair the wine to the diner, not the dinner. If you don't like Pinot or Cabernet, don't force it on the food just because it happens to be the perfect pairing. It really is about finding wines that you love first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And if the pairing doesn't work out, have a bun in between. I mean, there's lots of workarounds, not to get too uptight about it. But, I love little things that help me remember what might be good pairing tips, like, would you put lemon or butter on this dish? So if you would normally slather some butter over, say, a big juicy steak, then you're probably going to want a big full-bodied wine, like your Cabernet. But if you're going to squeeze lemon on a fish dish, say, then you're looking for wine with some acidity, whether it's Pinot or maybe into the bright whites, like, a Riesling or a Sauvignon Blanc or something like that. So I always look at the butter lemon test as a way of just a quick tip for finding great pairings, no matter where you are in a restaurant or store.
Yeah, that to me even goes to the mouthfeel. If you automatically need, to me, it's the texture of the food and how heavy it is, and the texture of the wine is kind of where I like to start to pair.
Exactly.
Too.
I love that. Yeah. The texture has to be just as important.
I think people don't realize that wine itself has texture and that plays a part. And, there's certain wines that I just don't care for because they're too thin. They don't have the mouthfeel that I personally look for. And so that's exactly illustrated in your example. If you want butter, you're not ever going to like the lemon, so don't force it. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, there's a variety of tips in that free class. But then if you want to take a deeper dive, I offer paid courses. So we just go into everything then in the paid courses. We have a whole segment on fast food and wine. So from fried chicken to pizza to hamburgers. And then we'll do a segment on a multi-course dinner party and all the different wine pairings that you might want to try, or traditional turkey dinner. So we have a lot of fun with it. I love pairing because I think it brings in people in the most accessible way to wine through food first. So I get people who are complete novices with wine coming to my courses, but I also do get sommeliers taking the paid courses because a lot of the traditional designations don't focus heavily on that food pairing component, and yet it's so central to what they do.
I would think that they would have a little section about that.
Yeah, you can.
Yes, I'm sure they have small sections, but the sommeliers
but yours
who've
is
been
going a
taking
little
mine,
bit just even
it's
broader.
all in.
Okay.
Exactly. All the different food categories. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like sometimes I stunt the som when I say, well, what would you pair with this? And sometimes you almost feel like the response is rote or, well, this or this. And you really want deeper than rote when you know what you're doing. You want to go a little bit further. So that's good to help them hone their skills as well.
Especially if you've got 4 diners and someone's having the steak, someone's having the fish.
And they want to share one bottle.
They want one bottle.
Yeah.
What are you going to recommend? In that case, just so I don't beg the question here, but I do recommend what I call switch hitter wines, which can please a number of palates, but also pair well with a number of dishes. And happily, Pinot Noir is one of them. And I would say Riesling is another that can kind of go both ways in palates and dishes. If you're looking for just one bottle and you've got high divergence on dishes and palates.
Oh, excellent. Already dropping some tips here, aren't we, today?
Dropping the bombs.
Yeah. Do we want to go ahead and move into wine number 2, Michelle, before we get into some more questions for Natalie?
Reach over and grab it. This is, okay, so we got this Rascal. It's the Oregon Wine Company. It is a Pinot Noir, but what intrigued Sandy about it is the wine label itself. So it actually has what we would consider the more traditional serving portion and information, which we are advocates of knowing what you're consuming. And we just found this very interesting that it actually had a wine label on it. So
I have never, ever seen a wine label that has the specific calories and a true food label. I
Yeah.
had never seen that before. And when as soon as I saw this, I was like, we have got to show this to people.
In the style of the USDA format that people are familiar with. And so the serving size is 5 ounces. It's 118 calories. And let me tell you, that's a lot of calories for 5 ounces. Carbohydrates is 3.2 grams, no fat and no protein. So you're not getting any goodies there, just the carbs. But anyway, we found that very, very interesting and helpful for the consumer who likes to know what they're consuming. So that was why we chose that.
Absolutely. I think that should be part of wine labels. I know it changes every year, but even a QR code that would point to that info on the website, like I think it is doable for wine labels, either that way or some sort of scannable code. Yeah.
Or the QR code, exactly. Yes. And so many times whenever I go to even look to scan for like the text sheet, just so that I'll, if I want to really know what the soil type is when it was harvested, I'm surprised more people don't have those QR codes. I know some do, but not everybody. And it's just such an easy, doable thing. I don't know why everybody's not doing it.
It's so intimidating to think, to me, looking at it, a QR code just looks like, oh my gosh, that must be so hard. And then when you find out, no, it's just this little thing and it puts information at your fingertips so quickly. It's like, yeah, we need to broadcast that, how easy it is to do.
Exactly. And I think more of us got used to it during COVID because I know restaurants here, you go in, you'd scan the QR code for the menu because they didn't want to give you paper or other formats of the menu just to reduce contact. But so I think people are coming around to it. But I think ingredient labeling on wine is a hot issue. And we are moving that way, I believe, because consumers do want more information. But also, I think there's a counter movement toward a lot of the marketing of like wine as self-care and purporting that wine is still alcohol. It can be a toxin. But I think we're looking for more and more transparency in labeling, as you say, the ingredients, but also serving sizes. People have no idea often, especially women, just how many glasses is moderation, especially when wines can vary from, 10% alcohol to 16%. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And that's where we are.
Yeah.
We have been focusing on how to fit wine into a balanced lifestyle. And that is such a trick because, 5 ounces, 118 calories, not a lot of people have a lot of give in that direction. So then you really have to pick and choose. And it's just a whole nother thing to think about and consider. But let's consider this glass of wine. So it's light. I believe it's a little bit lighter than the previous one.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm trying to give a little
It's from Oregon. I don't know if you told everyone. So that is going to be cooler than the Santa Rita Hills. And it is lighter. Mm-hmm. It's more transparent. I can see my fingers through the glass. I don't know if y'all can see that.
Yeah, definitely. Different climate there.
There is some viscosity because there is a good bit of legs coming down. So,
does it say the alcohol percentage on the label? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Check mine too.
This one is 13.5, so it's up there. And I was thinking with the calories being where they were that it probably was going to be a little
Mine
bit
was
higher.
13.
Not 14.
Mine was 13.5. What was yours, Natalie?
This is 12.5, so you can see the effect of a cool climate, right? It's not getting as much sugar in the grapes to convert to alcohol, so it makes sense that this would be lower. But also Emma Gardner, the winemaker, strives to pack so much flavor and just so little alcohol. I'm so impressed with what she does.
Ooh, that's always a good thing.
Yes,
All
it
right,
is.
Here we go.
Right, so
It's a little more closed off than the last one.
not as aromatic, definitely.
Definitely more acidic.
And it's
more sour, this one, in my opinion.
tart. Very tart. But the tart isn't acidic as some can be. And it does have a nice mouthfeel. It isn't as thin as some, which, again, is a thing for me.
So if you were doing a tasting of all three wines in a row, would you recommend starting with the most tart and then moving to the more fleshy, ripe Pinot of the three?
I would.
Yeah, I think so too. Like if people are trying to do different wines, sometimes if it is reversed, the one that is less ripe can taste sort of wimpy by comparison, right?
Well, and it's just so pulls at your tongue so much more that then that does not help, and it makes it seem more sour or more stringent than what it actually is. So you're not getting the true effect of what the wine is. Like this, I think is really, we should have probably have flipped it, because this one is already, to me, more pulling on the tongue and taking all the fruit away. I think I would have preferred to have had this one first.
This one is a little drier. The other one was juicier in the mouth, but it's not as thin, I don't think. So it's a cross. And what happens sometimes for me, when you get that nice full mouthfeel and then you go backwards to a lighter, thinner, it doesn't do the lighter, thinner the service that it needs. That's really why the weight of the wine is important in the tasting process for me.
Yes. Yeah. I always liken it to the movies, especially now that Top Gun is out. You don't want to start with your biggest special effect at the beginning. You want the big bang either midway through or near the end, right? Yeah.
Yeah, your climax. Well, that kind of leads into where you're already thinking of climax for your books. You've done, 2 full books now, and you're writing your 3rd. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
The first book was called Red, White, and Drunk All Over, a wine-soaked journey from grape to glass. And that, you can see how seriously I take my subject, or myself. But I had a lot of fun. I took the approach of do the thing, don't just report on it or interview about it. So I became a sommelier for a night in a fancy 5-star restaurant. I helped with the harvest with Randall Graham at Bonnie Doon Winery in California. I worked a wine shop in New York City. So instead of just interviewing a winemaker, a sommelier, someone who works at a wine store for all the tips, I tried to do it and experience it, which I think allowed me to get some deeper insights and gave me lots of opportunities to make fun of myself. So I was able to include some humor at my own expense. But yeah, it's kind of again, I admire the new journalists. There was a journalist called George Plimpton, an American journalist, and he spent a year playing in the NFL to write a book about it. It wasn't his career. He was a journalist. Yeah, he wasn't back there on the bleachers. He was in the game, literally. But a lot of them have been known.
He had to have had some skill.
Well, he must. Yeah, I'm just thinking to be able to do that. Yeah.
He had to have some aptitude for it, for sure, not to get clobbered on the field. But I was able to interview all sorts of interesting people, Domaine Romani Conti and Burgundy, Auberge de Volaine, the sort of holy grail of Pinot Noir, and just get into all sorts of things. But that was book number 1, so that you kind of learn how to appreciate wine, buy it, pair it with food, and so on. And then book number 2, the title was Unquenchable, and the subtitle was A Tipsy Search for the World's Best Bargain Bottles, because I am a wine cheapskate by heart. And what I was doing there was the same approach, but this time looking for great values in the world. So where can we find really excellent wines without overpaying? And so what came out of that book, in addition to adventures on the wine trail, like going to all these different regions and hanging out with winemakers, was tips like go south. So in many regions, California, France, Italy, the cachet expensive wines tend to be in the north and the less expensive in the south. So California, think Napa and Sonoma. You go south to Paso Robles, you'll probably get better values. In France, Burgundy and Bordeaux, go south to the Languedoc. Italy, Piedmont, Tuscany, go south to Sicily, and you'll often get, they're lesser established regions, but they have the warmth to ripen the grapes. They have different cost structure where you're going to get more deals.
Why do you think that is? I mean, if it's everywhere, if it's California, France, Italy, why? Why do you start north as expensive and then you go more south as less expensive?
I don't know if it's a history of the north developing their brands and industry more quickly, becoming more established earlier, and the South always being looked down on as peasant wines. I don't think Paso Robles is peasant wines, but I do think, in Sicily and Languedoc, those were very country wines, and they didn't have a lot of cachet, whereas in the North, if you look at Italy, that's where all the fashion was, Gucci, Versace, the cars, Ferrari, All the industry was in the North, the brand development, the marquee names. And in the South, they just sort of made country wines for their own consumption. But now, of course, they're making them for the world, and they've improved their techniques and the technology, and they just offer incredible value.
It parallels a lot of society.
It's very good to know.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah,
It does.
exactly.
Excellent. So those are your
Absolutely.
2 books. And now your 3rd book that you're currently writing is in the works. So tell us a little bit what the idea is of that book.
So this title could change, but I think we've got it. The title is Wine Witch on Fire. It's a memoir, and the subtitle is Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Depression, and Drinking Too Much. And yeah, it's not exactly the sunny journey I took in the first 2 books.
Ouch.
But exactly. There's
That's
still
the
humor,
weight. That's the weight
and
of
there's
it
still
right
wine,
there. That's your
but
3rd
it's
course.
more a memoir. It's focused on one particular year, my worst vintage of my life, which was 2012. And it starts with my divorce that comes out of the blue for me, and then ends with kind of a social media meltdown. So it's got all the things. Some people hear the book description think, is this fiction or nonfiction? And I have to say, it's a true story. It's my story. This year was that, had it all. That great, yeah. So I have the description, which I can share with you if you like. I can read it like a movie trailer, in a world where one woman, no, just
great.
kidding. So this is the searingly honest memoir of one woman's struggle to write her own story in the glamorous but sexist wine industry. Natalie McLean is a best-selling wine author married to a high-powered CEO. I really do need that movie trailer voice when everything goes wrong. Her husband of 20 years suddenly asks for a divorce. Still reeling, she faces an onslaught of attacks from an online mob who could destroy her career. She wavers between retreating into despair and drinking and rallying to reclaim her son and self-worth. She chronicles the worst vintage of her life with vulnerability and humor, including escapades dating zero-effort men and wine-soaked get-togethers with girlfriends. Her memoir reveals the corrosive chauvinism at the heart of the wine world, the slick marketing encouraging women to drink too much, and the societal pressure to conform to the approved narrative. This is the true story of what can happen when you discover your own power to transform your life and love.
Well, I cannot wait to hear it. And I want to hone in on that marketing to women to overdrink.
Excellent.
I cannot stand the mommy wino culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The mommy
Amen.
juice, that whole thing just irks me. So,
Or the mommy juice.
it sounds like you're going to really hit that hard. So it sounds like you have the same thoughts we do on it. What exactly are your thoughts on that? And how do you think it occurred? And how can we stop it?
We are going to solve it all today, ladies.
Yeah.
So, that wine mom culture. I mean, as you probably know, various studies have revealed that women buy 80% of the wine. Yeah.
The majority.
80%, we drink
Right.
66% of it, and yet we were an untapped market. But what happened when wine marketers woke up to this is they started treating women like cash cows, stupid cash cows, actually, that we needed to be given a reason to drink. So it was girls' night out or, whatever. We need an occasion, whereas wines were marketed to men because they just wanted to drink. They didn't need an occasion or permission to drink. So they didn't need a reason, but we somehow need a reason.
They didn't need a reason.
It's spa weekend. So, gals all get together. And, that spawned a whole raft of things from pink labels to these. I mean, there are wines called Mommy's Juice and Mommy's Time Out and Mad Housewife and Strut and Stiletto with all the red lips and high heels. And I just think that it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but it's thinly veiled joke, which is not that funny and is just meant to demean women that, we can be as much connoisseurs as men can. And I don't know what started it, but I think the need for sales, it's always market driven, isn't it, business wise, to tap into the women as a market. But it's just been done so crassly And even in my book, I think one of the most egregious examples were a series of wines that was brought out for The Handmaid's Tale, which I don't know if you've watched the television series or read the book by Margaret Atwood.
I watch it.
Yeah.
I love it. But I didn't
Me
even know
too.
that there was a wine marketed for them. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's just over the top because the book is very powerful in its...
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, they took them off the market after a big social media backlash because...
Was that the social media war that you had?
No, not me. I had another personal war. But I go into like what it is, like, you know, the whole cancel culture and everything else. But I survived to tell the tale. But yeah, Handmaid's Tale is just, the wines were just over the top. Like, they were comparing the women, the characters, they were personifying them as wines. And as we know, it's a very serious, deep kind of story, and it just trivialized the whole story. But yeah, I don't know, there's such a confluence in addition to the market pressure to find new markets. And now we're seeing the advent of clean wines and yoga and wine and all the rest of it, which is still marketed toward women. It's just the next generation of these wines are coming out with these kind of labels. And, you know, what to do to combat it is, you know, we vote with our dollars. So A, don't buy them, but B, like, you know, I don't know. I think we can do our part on social media too. There's a lot of wine memes and I get sucked into them too. Like, you know, if it doesn't come from the sparkling region in France, the Champagne region in France, then it's just ordinary mansplaining, sparkling mansplaining. Anyway, like, there's all kinds of these memes.
Oh, I haven't
I haven't
seen
seen that either.
You know, wine is to women as duct tape is to men. It fixes everything, all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I will chuckle or smile, but then I think, you know, what is this perpetuating? And then I kind of tried to dig another layer deeper because I asked, what is my role in perpetuating this? Am I bringing more pain or pleasure into the world? Because my shtick, if you look back at the titles of my books, Red, White, and Drunk All Over, my overconsumption was fodder for joking about myself, which is a double-edged sword. It can also be an enabler, or people thinking, well, it's not so serious. She's a woman. She likes a drink or three. So I get into that too, because I am, you know, a writer, whether or not you like the term influencer, but, you know, I participate in that culture, or was participating in it and sort of perpetuating it. And so I kind of dig into that too, because I have to be honest and turn the question on myself as well.
Well, and for ourselves, you know, that's what we're in the same boat, because when we started 2.5 years ago, we wanted to learn more about wine. And then it became, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because really to learn more about wine, you do have to drink wine. You have to drink a lot, but you have to be cognizant of where and when and how, and not slipping into it becoming an excuse to just drink. And so we kind of step back and, you know, wine is very complex. It should be a treat. To me, just going, and I respect the idea of a value and getting a value wine, but I would rather save my dollars and my calories for that nice treat wine than I would finding that $10 one that, you know, allows you to have it 5 times a week. And so we've tried to really be cognizant of that. And not that the $10 wines aren't going to be good, because you can find those values as well, but finding the balance between why we're seeking it out and what we're trying to put out in the world is important. And I think you've learned that too, is you don't want to contribute to a negative when you want to contribute to a positive. And wine is a positive society. The people in it are great. The stories in it are great, but you don't want to allow it to become something that drags people down. And unfortunately, the marketing is enabling that, like we said.
Yeah, exactly. It's so easy to slip into it when it's what you do. Like, I'm surrounded by bottles everywhere where I work. And it's easy to give it the mask of, oh, I need to do this. This is my job. But there are ways for both professionals and just wine lovers to moderate their consumption. You're talking about, you know, drink less but better. You know, I'll do things like being more conscious about how much I'm drinking. So if I open a bottle, I'll pour half of it into a clean, empty bottle, a half bottle, so it doesn't get oxygenized. And I can save that for another night, rather than thinking, oh, I just opened this really great wine. I better,
Better not waste
finish it or that sort of thing.
I actually took your tip of doing that, Natalie, where I went and
good.
bought with the half bottles, the 350, just so that I could pour it into my leftover wine so that it wouldn't, like you said, become oxygenized. And then I just pump it out and just let it sit because...
Okay, so that's a good tip. So you buy a smaller vessel to store it. You basically create your own split.
Yeah, you create your own split.
That's
yeah,
great.
Exactly.
That's very good.
It works on so many levels because it makes you very conscious of how much you're drinking. Okay, this is a half bottle. It makes you not feel ripped off the next night because you drank 3/4 of the bottle and then feel like opening
I have to do
another
another one
bottle.
because I only got a little bit left in this. Yeah.
Exactly. Or thinking, this doesn't taste so good. It's a little bit oxidated. So by filling that half bottle, then you reduce all of that.
Makes good sense. And the Coravin is a good thing to have as well.
Coravin is great, a great device. And there's a little recycled plastic thing called Repour that's really good. It scavenges the oxygen.
We've had them on the show and had that. That's a great, great tool.
It is. It's a great tool. Yeah. Well,
yes.
This has been such a fun interview, Natalie. It's kind of like girl fanning over here.
No, I love chatting with you ladies. I mean, that just flew by. It was like, wow, we could chat all day.
Well, so the other thing that we do, though, before we wrap up is we do rate the wines, and we usually do it without the guests, but you haven't contributed the wines, so we don't have to worry about that. And we're doing your recording device. So you're going to stay on and rate the wines with us.
Yes.
All right. So
I will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let's tell her what our rating system is.
Sure.
We don't rate by quality. We rate for our own personal interest because whenever we're drinking these, we want to know what we want to go and buy again.
Okay.
So we do it by corks, 1 through 5. The first cork is fine to sink. That is, just not good. 2 corks is you'll finish the glass just to be polite. 3 corks is, that was nice. I think I'll have another glass. 4 corks is, that was really good. I think I'll have to go find it and get another bottle to try it again. 5 corks is, I love it. I'm going to have to go buy a case.
Wow. Okay, I love that system.
All right, so let's go ahead and Michelle, let's start off so that she can get an idea. And we'll start off with our wine number 1, which was wine number 2 from Santa Rita Hills. Oh, let's see, I got to taste it again.
Oh, very thorough of you. I'm tasting mine too.
That one was very tart, $10.
You know what, Michelle, I think I may have flipped mine around because my wine number 2 and yours, I think, are different because this one's more tart, my second one.
I think you must have flipped them because the first one, and I was wondering when you were saying that. So full disclosure, what we'd usually do, I don't know if you did it, but I write my number on them. Did you write your number?
I didn't write my
she didn't write her number. That's another wine tool. We have the marker there.
You had the marker and I didn't have it. And I was like, because I was like, this one's very fruity. Why did we do this one
first? And I was wondering why you were saying yes. So if you flip them, that one definitely was in the right space, being wine number 2. And it's thinner. It's more acidic. It was $10. It would fit the bill if you're looking for something inexpensive. To me, that's a 2.5 to 3. I probably wouldn't revisit the bottle. I don't even know that I would finish the glass.
It makes more sense because that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And that's why when I was trying it, I was like, I just cannot imagine this being, Yeah. I'm going 2.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, Natalie.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, Natalie, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So I really do love this wine. I mean, I picked it. I asked that we could talk about Pinot because this is one of my favorite wines. So it's already a shoo-in. So I'm 4.5 corks out of 5. And so that means I wouldn't buy 1 bottle or a case. I would buy 6, but I'd probably keep buying 6s.
Might as well be
I do buy this wine. Yeah, I do buy this wine. I think it's terrific value. And, for your listeners who may not have access to this particular wine because it's from Niagara, Ontario, I do want to say Niagara, Ontario is a beautiful place to visit. So if you do come up and visit us, go to 30 Bench. It's a cute little winery, beautiful, outlooking the lake and on this high rise of land, really worth visiting. So if you can't buy it, come and see us. Yes.
Oh,
Getting to
another
do the
good
Finger
tip.
Lake area and then the Canadian wine region is on my wine bucket
Yes.
list, which might be more accessible than some. The other thing that I don't know, Natalie, if you noted about us, is the wines that we try on Wines to Find are wines we've never had before. So
terrific.
they're always
Good
brand
for
new to
you.
us. And that was the premise for starting the show was we're going to taste 2 wines we've never had to get that exposure to the wine and then document it as we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's very honest too. That's
The
very good to
experience,
do
right?
that. I brought a carpetbagger. So I just brought my favorite wines like, I just love this.
This is my
Give me an
favorite.
excuse
Well,
to
that's
open
good
it.
for our listeners, though, to be exposed to one that is a slam hit. So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Sandy,
Terrific.
wine number 2, that was...
Yeah. So the next one, wine number 2, I will give that a 3. I liked it better because it was fruitier, and I think that I don't think that one it'll give me a headache. I'm a little worried about the first one giving
Wine
me
number
a headache.
2, for me, had more balance. It had less of the thin and acid. It's still, again, Pinot gets like a negative from me just right off out the gate. So it has to be a really great Pinot for me to love it. And for me, this isn't a great Pinot. So I'm going to go 2.5, 3. Yeah, I don't know that I would revisit again the bottle. So, but you would, so that's good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then we were trying for Trader Joe's.
Yes, absolutely. And it's that discovery and the value. And at least you're not at the kitchen sink. So
No,
you've
we're
moved away
not.
from the sink and
Yeah.
at least they survived. There you go.
And they'd be great to cook with,
It's always a use.
Well, Natalie, before you go, tell our listeners where they can follow you, all that good stuff, where they can find you.
Sure. So it's my website, nataliemclean.com is the best place to follow me or find me because all my social media is there.
Wow.
And if you're wondering how to spell that, you don't have to remember. If you just Google Natalie and wine, I'm right at the top. I don't think there are a lot of other Natalies who are as into wine as I am. But anyway, so it's nataliemclean.com. The free class is at nataliemclean.com/class. And of course, everyone who's listening now can find my podcast either by searching on my name,
Excellent.
wine,
Very
or
good.
Unreserved Wine Talk. But nataliemclean.com will get you there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Sandy and Michelle. This was terrific. I love chatting with both of you.
All right. Thank you. And for our listeners, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope you do check Natalie out. We hope that if you did like this episode, you would share it with a friend or family member that also loves wine. And we hope you'll join us next time on Wines to Find.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Sandy and Michelle. In the show notes, you'll find my email contact, the full transcript of my conversation with Sandy and Michelle, links to their website and podcast, and where you can find the live stream video version of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube Live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. You'll also find the link to my ultimate free guide to wine and food pairing. That's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/225. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or would like to be an early reader of my new memoir at nataliemclean.com. If you missed episode 98, go back and take a listen. I interview Sandy and Michelle about horizontal and vertical wine tastings, wine temperatures, and tasting tricks. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite. I love your approach, picking maybe one grape, but it's grown in different countries, or perhaps go with one region. It's that side-by-side comparison that is so illustrative of the differences between wines.
That really has opened up our eyes doing verticals and horizontal tastings.
Yes, and we mean the wines, not the people, when we say horizontal and vertical. So, all right. Horizontal is like Shiraz from different wineries or different regions, but vertical would be Shiraz from one winery, but going back to older vintages.
We actually did a vertical tasting Pinot Noir from a specific producer and tasted 4 different wines. It is interesting to see how the grapes grown in the same location with the same winemaker, everything's the same, still turn out different. It's very eye-opening when you taste them side by side like that.
If you liked this episode, please tell one friend about it this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in the wines, tips, and stories we shared. You won't want to miss next week when I chat with Tanya Pitts, the wine director at One Market Restaurant in San Francisco. Wine Enthusiast magazine named her Sommelier of the Year. She was also recently inducted into the Hall of Femmes, awarded membership in Les Dames Escoffier, and added to the advisory board of Women in Wine's Leadership Symposium, and has become an integral contributor to the Hugh Society, an organization focused on the increasing representation of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color in the wine industry. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week, perhaps a heartbreakingly beautiful Pinot Noir. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.